This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York.
Good evening. This is Heartstock Radio, and I'm your host, Carol Murphy. Thank you so much for listening. This evening, we have a great guest in store for everyone, but remember that you can find us on Facebook, and you can also email us at heartstockradio@gmail.com. Our guest this evening is Jiwon Moon of Wefunder and XX, and in just a moment, Jiwon will be back to tell you all about what she's up to. This is Heartstock. Thanks for listening.
I saw below me that golden valley. Its land was made for you and me. I roamed and rambled and I followed my footsteps to the sparkling sands of.
This is Heartstock Radio, and I am your host, Carol Murphy. Today, our guest is Jiwon Moon. Hi, Jiwon.
Hello, Carol.
Thanks for being on Heartstock. So, please introduce yourself briefly here to our listeners and tell them what it is that you are working on currently.
Yes, my name is Jiwon Moon, and I work at a company called Wefunder, and it's a Kickstarter for equity crowdfunding. And I've been working here for 4 years, and my title is head of community at Wefunder, but I also am the founding partner at the XX.
So XX and Wefunder are connected, correct? XX is kind of a side project or a sub-project of Wefunder.
Right.
Is that right?
We can say it's like a startup within Wefunder.
A startup within Wefunder. So just a brief introduction of XX here too. Why XX? Wefunder, my impression of Wefunder, just kind of from the outside looking in, is that you guys have had a lot of success. And I'm just wondering, what was the inspiration for XX?
Right. The XX was inspired by a number. So I came back from a sabbatical. I took a 3-month sabbatical from Wefunder and came back with fresh eyes. And when I got back, one of the first articles I read in, I think it was TechCrunch somewhere online, was that only 2% of the VC money was going to female founders. And I was really upset about it because it wasn't even 20%, it was 2%. And I just found that number outrageous and decided to do something about it because I had a lot of resources here at Wefunder. And at the time, we were thinking about doing funds as well as the regular equity crowdfunding. And for the funds, we were thinking what would be something that people would get behind. And before we were even thinking about that, I thought, okay, we have to help female founders. We have to fund more of them because they're smart. And there's so many female founders that I know who need funding. So I went out and talked to a lot of female founders and talk to them about money, what they need. And they didn't just need money, but they needed mentors and they needed a community. And so that's why I created the XX, which is an accelerator for founders to grow together and make each other better versions of themselves.
Very inspiring. And it seems like there are an awful lot of support systems that are sprouting up for women. I'm noticing it myself. You and I met, like 3.5 years ago, and just in that very narrow window of time, many others like XX and other organizations are appearing on the horizon. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that in just a moment, but I would really love for our listeners to get to know you more. Where did you grow up? How did you get involved in Wefunder? Where did you go to school? All those fun little tidbits about you.
I hope I'm not boring.
No.
In my short life of 28 years. So I was born in Korea. I was born in Seoul, Korea, and I lived there until I was 10 years old. And I think my dad had a quarter or half-life crisis, and it was like, I've always wanted to live in the US. We're going to move there somehow. So he quit his job and went on to get an MBA. And that's how our whole family moved out here. And I really didn't know why we moved because my dad didn't really explain why we were moving. And so I didn't know any English. I had to learn all of it when I was 10 years old. But I really loved that whatever I did, if I put an effort into something, then I would get a big reward in the US. And I was a typical immigrant child, so I wanted to be a doctor all my life. And I went to UC Berkeley to study pre-med. And my third year, I realized I really didn't like going to the hospitals. I was shadowing a cardiologist at the time, and everyone else around me, they were so excited to go shadow their doctor, but I hated going to the hospital, and I dreaded it so much, and I was so stressed that I decided to just quit it cold turkey that day, and I decided to do something else. But I didn't know what to do, to be honest, because I was so in this bubble, and I thought I'd be a doctor all of my life. And I realized I didn't want that at 21, and it was a really scary time for me. Let's see. After that, I just decided to do economics because it just made sense. I felt that it was a mix of math and humanities and science. So I decided to study economics. After that, I went to a consulting firm. It was a boutique consulting firm in Alameda. And I hated my job. I've never hated a job before, but I hated that job so much. And I was crying almost every night and didn't want to work there anymore. So I quit after 6 months without having any plans or any much money. I didn't save very much because I wasn't earning so much at the time. And after I quit, I remember going on walks to clear my head every day. And one of the ideas that I had was interviewing Asian entrepreneurs because I felt that I didn't see many Asian entrepreneurs in general. And maybe it was because I was in a bubble of pre-med and doctors, but I just never really considered entrepreneurship because it wasn't a thing in my family and no one around me was becoming an entrepreneur. So I was like, well, where are the Asian ones? I see a lot of guys, a lot of white male and on covers of Forbes or any other business magazines, but I just never saw people who look like me in magazines. So I decided to do something fun, which was to just cold email people, startup founders, tea house owners, boba shop owners, and just interviewed them and asked them, how did you convince your parents that you're going to sell bubble tea? And so I talked to 10 of them, including Coffee Meets Bagel founders, which are 3 sisters. They're Korean American sisters, and they're doing really great still. Boba Guys is a really popular boba chain in New York and San Francisco. And yeah, they were all willing to talk to me. And through this, I learned about entrepreneurship in the Bay Area. And then one day I was like, okay, I need a job. I really need to pay for myself. I went on Craigslist because my friend was like, hey, Jiwon, you like writing, you like storytelling. Why don't you go on Craigslist? And I never thought about looking for a job there, but there it was. There was storyteller at Wefunder on Craigslist. And that's how I found the job. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is what I do in my free time when I'm making no money. Like this is what I should be doing. And I emailed Nick, the founder, and didn't hear back for 2 weeks. And I was really devastated. But after 2 weeks, he emailed me back and we had coffee and the rest is kind of history. I just really loved Wefunder, the team, and joined, I think, the week after, something like that.
So what was it about the team and Wefunder in particular that was such a draw for you?
I think it's the mission that anyone can invest in startups and small companies. And I just love the concept that I can be a part owner of a coffee shop that I love going to every single day. I think that is what drew me in. And the team is made up of A players, so people who are amazing, and I learned so much from every single day. I think that's what drew me in. And I really grew a lot from my younger Wefunder days, even probably I grew a lot since when I met you, Carol.
A lot has happened, yeah.
Yeah, lots happened. And I think it was only possible because I worked here.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed. So now you're working on XX. Is that your primary focus, or you kind of took that on in addition to everything else that you were already doing?
Right. It goes in phases. So some days I am working just on XX. So maybe 2 months before the XX begins, I have to prepare for it full time, like very, very hardcore for 8 weeks. When it starts, it kind of trickles. So I only spend probably 1 or 2 full days on the XX now. And the rest of my time is helping Wefunder build its community. And so like today is a good example of what I did is like I work on what's called ideas, and I can tell you more about it later, but basically how to get idea stage people to get funding. And also I'm trying to give great advice from companies that have raised a lot on Wefunder and that have figured out how to build a community within their company to give advice. And so I'm building content for founders. And then I also talked to some interns and talked to XX founders and gave them advice. So my days are full of meeting founders, which I really love and get inspired by.
Mm-hmm. And who is your co-founder for XX?
Yeah, it's funny because I call it a startup, but yeah, the primary person that I worked on the XX with was Jacqueline. And Jacqueline is somebody that I pitched for like 2 hours one weeknight, and she just graduated from Berkeley, I think a year or 2 ago, and she was working as a paralegal at a law firm. And I just felt like we were sisters ever since we met. And I was like, Jacqueline, this is a really important problem, and only you and I can solve this problem. And she quit her job, I think that week, and decided to work on the XX and at Wefunder now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So let's back up just a little bit. At the inception of XX, how did you come up with the basic framework of how you're going to work with entrepreneurs? And it's strictly for women, correct?
The first cohort focused on female founders. The second is not just for female founders. It was open for immigrant founders. But what's exciting is that of the 8 companies that we invested in, 4 of them have female CEOs.
Mm-hmm. And so you and Jacqueline kind of sat down and designed the whole program and said, based on talking to female founders, this is what we feel we need to create. Is that right?
It was a little different. So I had never run an accelerator or worked on an accelerator before. I've never been a part of one either. So basically, it was a lot of brainstorming between myself and Nick, who is the CEO of Wefunder. And Nick went through the Accelerator Y Combinator out in Mountain View. And he had an amazing 3 months there. I think he did it in 2015. So through that experience, he knew what was really helpful for him as a founder. And he tried to tell me a lot of advice. He said, doing weekly dinners with experienced founders and meeting them, getting coffee with them afterwards has been very helpful for him. But it's also weekly office hours and meeting all of your founder friends every week and talking about your progress and what you need brainstorming help with, and doing that every single week and keeping each other accountable. That is kind of where the power of the community comes out. So yeah, I guess that's what we did. We just modeled ourselves after Y Combinator because Nick was very adamant that that model is really powerful. And I guess what's different for XX compared to YC is that XX is very, very small. So we invested in 8 companies. They all live together in a building in Oakland. So they get really, really close. So it kind of has that family vibe, which I am very fond of. Yeah, but that's how the structure came about. We were like, okay, well, let's do it for 12 weeks because in 3 months you can probably see significant progress. Let's have them live together so that they get really close to each other and can brainstorm every single day, every single night. And the weekly dinner and office hours piece, that came from YC's model of how they do it and how it's proven to be very successful.
Very nice. Let's take a short music break. In just a moment, we will be back and talk more about XX. This is Heartstock, and I'm Carol Murphy, your host. Thanks for listening.
Clouds rolling, the voice was chanting as the fog was lifting. This land was made for you and me. As I went walking, I saw a sign there, and on the sign it said, no trespassing, but on the other side, it didn't say nothing. That sign was made for you and me. This land is your land, this land is my land, from California to New York Island, from redwood forests to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. This land was made for you and me.
Hi, this is Heartstock Radio, and I'm your host, Carol Murphy. Our guest today, we're speaking with Jiwon Moon. Hi, Jiwon.
Hello again.
We're talking all about Wefunder and XX. For those who may have just tuned in, can you, Jiwon, once again, just tell us a little bit about what XX is?
Yeah, XX is an accelerator to bring together founders, usually tech founders, come together and help each other become better versions of themselves over the course of 12 weeks.
Mm-hmm. So I think we really wanted to talk a little bit about how you find your participants in your accelerator.
Right. Yeah, we care a lot about diversity. So because the first cohort focused on investing in 6 female founders, we had to think really, really hard and look really hard to find these female founders because as you probably noticed, I think things are different now, but yeah, there aren't as many of them. I think a lot of female founders are just starting to apply to accelerators and applying to funds, but I think maybe 4 or 5 years ago, there weren't as many, especially in Silicon Valley. So where we went to look for female founders is we went to Facebook groups for female founders. We went to a website called alpha.com, and it's a bunch of females, usually in tech, usually building companies, and it's a great resource and great website. It's like a forum for women to talk to each other. I would say Facebook was very useful. Alpha, we went on Slack groups as well, where we looked for specific female founder groups. But that has always been very important for us, where we do outreach, because if people don't see or read about XX, then they're not going to know to apply. So we did as much as we can to find them. And we also went on went on business trips to Atlanta, for example. And we were like, okay, people in Atlanta probably have never heard of Wefunder or XX, or just they don't have exposure to us. So we went and did a trip out there to meet founders face to face. But yeah, that's how we did things back then, and did that again for our second cohort as well for immigrant founders, but focus on immigrant founders next.
Yeah, and it seems like diversity is a really important thing to you personally.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it important in the startup world? And why are you specifically in this cohort working with immigrant founders?
Mm-hmm. The diversity is important for me because I think it's because of my personal background of growing up as an immigrant in a very, I had no Asian friends growing up until I went to high school, for example. And I think diversity is important because if there are diverse founders, then you kind of look up to them, and kids can look up to a female Asian founder, for example, and see them on covers of magazines and aspire to be like them. And I also learn a lot from people with different perspectives and different backgrounds. I like to joke around with my teammates, Nick and Chris, who are working on the XX right now, and they're white males, and they have a very different background from me, but I learned so much from them. Like I learn about confidence. Like a lot of times they're like, why can't you, those founders and investors you're talking to, they're just people like you. And I grew up with the mentality where I am smaller, or I have to respect the elderly, for example. But Nick and Chris taught me not to think that way, which is very important. I learned so much from people who come from different backgrounds. And I think by having a diverse group of people come together, you just learn so much from each other. And we focus on immigrant founders because a lot of the Wefunder team, they're from different countries. A lot of us are immigrants. And so this was something that we all wanted to get behind. And also the fact that we love diversity of thoughts, right? Diversity of backgrounds, race, gender, everything has always been important for our team. And so we wanted to focus on immigrants for our second cohort.
Mm-hmm. So this typical venture capital model where women are only getting about 2% of the investment money, mm-hmm. It seems like that is in some ways part of how Y Combinator and Wefunder operates. It seems like they put a high importance on fast growth and the bottom line. So is this in some way a compromise? Are you compromising those values by strictly focusing on either women or immigrant founders?
Compromising our values because these are supposed to be high growth companies.
Yeah.
I want to make sure I understand the question.
Yeah. I mean, it's in my mind, it seems that, it's like profits or the environment. It's high growth or diversity. It's an either or thing. And I'm just wondering if that has been your experience, or if at times you find yourself feeling compromised mm-hmm. by the fact that you're strictly focusing on particular segments of, founders as opposed to just focusing on this VC model of high growth.
No, not compromising at all. I like to say that we focus on diversity by just choosing the best applicants, and we're not compromising by having diverse founders and investing in diverse founders. If anything, we're really gaining so much by being around these diverse founders. I guess what I want to say is, I think compromise is a bad word. So I'm trying to think. Because there are so many diverse founders from all over the world. I know YC accepted maybe half of the companies from outside of the US this last cohort, and they just choose the best companies. And we also just choose the best companies. And half of them happen to have female CEOs. So I think we are achieving a lot by helping founders from diverse backgrounds, females, immigrants. They're all amazing, and they're all in every places of the world. And so I guess that's my answer. No compromise. The best people are everywhere, and we just have to do a better job of doing outreach to find these people and letting them know that they have the resources and they can be part of XX or YC.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about XX from the funding and the investor standpoint. There's that 20,000 magical number, 20,000 startups and $20,000. Can you talk a little bit about who your investors are and why 20,000?
That's a really good question, because the reason we came up with the 20,000 companies, which I think is super ambitious to this day, is because we like the XX. I came up with the name XX because I just like the sound of it. And after that, we were trying to find another name because some people were saying is it XX chromosomes? And I was like, no, we just like the name. We just like the sound of it. And we couldn't find a better name. And we found out that in Roman numerals, XX with bars over each X means 20,000. And we were like, oh, cool, we invest 20,000. And we were thinking, okay, let's be ambitious. If we're going to be ambitious, let's be really ambitious and let's invest in 20,000 companies. And I hope we can do that. But yeah, that's how the XX came about. And sorry, what was the first question?
So each startup gets $20,000 in capital when they're admitted to the accelerator. And by, 2026? Is that your goal?
I think it's 2029.
2029, your goal is to have invested $20,000 in 20,000 startups.
Right.
Which is very ambitious. So the other part of that question was kind of related to the investors and how you fund your accelerator.
Right. So
we got about 2 minutes. Unfortunately, our time is flying by.
Oh, yeah, we have 2 minutes. I'll try to explain quickly. But investors for the first two cohorts came from Wefunder, our platform. And there are people you have to be accredited in order to invest in the XX, unfortunately, because XX is a fund. And so they came from our accredited investor base. Mm-hmm. And I think they just care about what we're doing. I spoke to some of the XX investors and they just love what we're doing, what we're working on. Some of them just care a lot about female founders or for immigrant founders. Some speakers, some experienced founders who came to our events just loved our event and decided to invest in us, for example. And so, yeah, I guess that's how we're able to fund ourselves. And we didn't start out with a lot of money, because we just needed $120,000 to invest in 6 companies. That's really, really small compared to a lot of funds out there. Yeah.
So how might our listeners reach out to you and find you?
Yes, I'm at Jiwon at wefunder.com, JIWON at wefunder.com, and I respond to almost all emails.
Mm-hmm. And this is Heartstock Radio. I'm Carol Murphy. Thank you so much, Jiwon, for being on Heartstock.
And thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Heartstock Radio is a production of KBMF 102.5 Butte America Radio. Hear our live programs every Friday at 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time via livestream at butteamericaradio.org.